Now, our coverage tonight begins with update on the trial of the End Bad Governance protesters. President Bola Tinubu has ordered the immediate release of all minors detained last Friday in connection with the End Bad Governance protests. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, along with concerned Nigerians and various local and international human rights groups, had urged the president to direct the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice to secure the release of all End Bad Governance protesters, including 32 hungry and malnourished children. SERAP expressed concerns that the children and other protesters were detained solely for peacefully exercising their human rights. The groups also warned that the continued detention of protesters could deter other citizens from exercising their rights. And now to discuss this further, we are joined by legal practitioner and public affairs analyst Towo Oseruwajo, who is joining us from the United Kingdom. You're welcome. Good to have you here, Towo. Now, after a few days of widespread condemnation, President Tinubu has ordered the immediate release of all detained minors from the End Bad Governance protest. So the question is, what do you make of this?
Marcino, good evening, and it's a pleasure joining you too. Well, if you look at the president directive, you see that it's contrary to laid down procedures because the matter is already in court. And I believe, though the president's statements should be directed to the Attorney General of the Federation, which by virtue of Section 174 of the Constitution, he ought to, because, you know, bail has been granted, and for those minors to be released based on the legal procedures known to law and in Nigeria, is for them to meet the bail condition. So what the president ought to have done is to direct, which he has directed, and I believe that the Attorney General of the Federation would have taken swift action by filing processes to make sure that the date is brought forward and enter what we call the nulli prosequi by virtue of Section 174 of the Constitution. So by entering that procedure, he can terminate the procedure in court, then carry out the order of the president. And also, we should not forget that the president's order does not elevate the children from prosecution, because it's stated with condition, without prejudice to the law, and which the law also involve them of being prosecuted for the alleged offense or any other offenses that may come up in the course of the review of the case in total.
Now, Towo, you did mention that this goes against legal procedures. So I'm wondering exactly what the implications would be on the judiciary.
Yeah, the implication will be that you know, when the judiciary is caught up in procedures that are alien to what ought to have been, you know, issues like this would have come up, because some of us who are spectators, some of us who are also active participants in the procedure or trying to provide legal support to the affected district, were surprised that the judge or the judiciary can raise some issues so motu, which, when I mean so motu, in his own power, is the beginning and the end when anything that is before it, to have stopped some of the procedure that took place before the court. So we don't really know, but I think the directive is vague. It's left for the Attorney General of the Federation to put legal backing to it, to carry out his statutory provision, statutory law, to make sure that the procedures are not just swept under the carpet. So are not just the president is not overriding the judicial powers of the court.
Now, Towo, there is a child rights law that actually stipulates exactly how kids are to be detained if they have to be. And this also states that they have to be detained with their parents, or at least with the knowledge of their parents. In this case, we don't see any parents who have come forth, or any consideration given to the parents of these kids. Why is that so? And especially that we're speaking about the judiciary here, of whom should actually know of these procedures.
Yeah, you see, why I try to question the first leg of the president's directive, I must commend the president on the second leg of his directive, because you could see that, I think, if I can recall one Inspector General of Police, I think there was an Inspector General of Police that made a statement, and which was followed to the latter, that any police officer who incurred any liability as a result of professional misconduct will be held liable personally, and it will be charged against his pension. For that period, between that period of the Inspector General of Police, the police were basically exercising maximum professionalism in how they handle cases. The second leg of the president directive will now come into play, that the law enforcement agencies or the people that were involved. Remember, some of these children, some of these minors were brought from Kaduna, some from other states down to Abuja, and there are procedures for that. Those officers involved in those procedures ought to, as a matter of fact, if it is a developed nation, they ought to have resigned. That is one. Or they need to face disciplinary measures if the procedures will follow this thing. Therefore, the judiciary is a cause for concern, because though we know that the judiciary lives in the society but is blind to the society, but the judiciary ought to have acted on things before them, which is already before them. I don't know. It's just we've not heard from the part of the judiciary. We're just hearing from the spectators of the media that, a bail was granted. But I think my Lord would have, or which I believe he might have done, ordered that the proper procedure should be followed. So the implication is that it exposes the intelligence or the security agencies as to their respect to human rights and their knowledge as to the law they ought to protect and maintain. It exposed them to that. Then the judiciary, I think it also exposed them as to procedural irregularities or procedural awareness which need to be carried out. Then for the children or for the minor and stakeholders who are involved in this matter, outside the presidential directive, they ought to take further steps. Fundamental rights procedures are open to the children, and those people involved should be held liable gently or individually, including the institutions.
Now, so the punishment for treason in Nigeria is actually death. Now, to see this story actually go all the way to have children in court being charged with treason was very, very worrying, especially for the minds of these kids. One has to ask if there is any sample or example from before where there had been a case of such, maybe in Nigeria or any other country, that perhaps maybe we could have taken an example from.
Well, you see, the law is dynamic in nature, and offenses are not restricted, are not respecters of age. If the children are fined, because you could see that we should not also forget that during the insecurity in the north, some of the suicide bombing that took place are particularly minors who carry out such acts as alleged, or some clips that were shown. So offenses are not restricted as to age. But the question is, if the children goes through this rigorous process of the alleged offense and they were found not guilty, what will become, in short, what becomes the fate of those days they spent in that inhuman facilities they kept them? That should be the questions in the mind. Then two, the also questions we should be asking is that the rapid process of investigation of treason is something that is laughable when it comes to the Nigerian police. That is why I fought the office of the Attorney General. Treason is an offense of public interest, that the Attorney General should not have left it to this long to be within the controls and confinement of the Nigerian police, when we know the extent they can go when it comes to issue of acting acting within outside the books. So it's not about the age of the children; it's about the procedure. But if they are found innocent, because the president's statement did not elevate them from the alleged offense, he said without prejudice to the law, so they may be charged, furtherly charged, and follow the due process. But what if they found them innocent? That should be the question of everywhere, meaning Nigeria. What if they are found innocent of those? Imagine the tag, treason. Then they are now found innocent. What will become the fate of the children? And what will become the loyalty of those children, of those minors, to the Nigerian society?
All right, so now my final question is going to be on the perception of Nigeria to the international community after this case. Well, it has gone international, whether we like it or not. What do you think we would be seen as to the outside community?
Well, to some of us, even to Nigerians, the reform of the Nigerian police or the reform of the law enforcement agency is something that this case has actually exposed, that there is little or no reform at all when it comes to the law enforcement agency. That is one. Then two, they uphold to the fundamental right of human. is zero level. If they can do this to minor, imagine what others. This is just a segment of the entire processes we are talking about. We're just looking at the minor. We're not looking at people who are just held as a result of exercising their rights. Because when you listen to the prosecuting counsel, I laughed when you look at it, because I don't understand whether the context of terminology is what is misleading there. End bad governance does not mean end government. It's the two things, the terminology. So the perception is very low. It's very low. But I think what can elevate the perception, or what can give a positive light to the perception, is that those key actors, the people involved, are meant to face the book, are meant to face discipline if they find one thing, so that the precedents they set will not be built on by others. Because if they let them go, they'll say, oh, we did it in 2024, we can do it again. And I'll tell you for free, from very reliable information, some of the officers involved, they are boasting, there's nothing they can do. And I just wish their boast do not go, their boast should not become an issue of fact.
There's still plenty of questions. Many people are asking regarding these kids, if they're let go, who would they be handed to? Because we've had very little knowledge regarding whether wards or parents. So there is still that lingering question as to who the guardians and who exactly these kids will be handed to. But we can't continue on that. I just wanted to mention that. To Oseruoja, thank you very much for joining us this evening to give your expert opinion on the matter. Now, in the meantime, following the recent arraignment of minors allegedly involved in the End Bad Governance protests at the Federal High Court in Abuja, which sparked public outcry, police have arraigned 19 more suspects, including 3 minors at State High Court 10 in Maiduguri, Borno State. Now, the suspects were charged before Justice Aisha Mohammed Ali for participating in similar protests in August of this year. This development comes amid increasing calls for the federal government to drop charges against the minors detained for high involvement in protests against hunger and high living costs. According to the charge sheets, the 3 minors are aged between 14 and 17 years. Representing the Borno State government, Attorney General Hawa Abubakar presented 2 separate charges accusing the defendants of treason and using social media to defame the state governor, Babagana Zulum, and incite citizens against the state. Now let's tell you that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arrested former governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, for the alleged diversion of 1.3 trillion naira in 13% derivation funds from the Federation's account between 2015 and 2023. Okowa was taken into custody on Monday, 4th November 2024 in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, after reporting to the Port Harcourt Directorate of the EFCC at the invitation of investigators handling his case. The former governor is accused of failing to account for the funds, along with an additional 40 billion naira he reportedly used to acquire shares in UTM Floating Liquefied Natural Gas. Okowa allegedly invested 40 billion naira in shares within one of the country's major banks, representing an 8% equity stake to facilitate the offshore LNG project. The funds are suspected to have been redirected for other purposes. We'll now head to the U.S. for our continued coverage of the 2024 U.S. elections. A recent ledger poll published by the New York Post reveals that U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris are locked in a close race ahead of Tuesday's election, with each securing 49% support. Only 2% of respondents indicated they would vote for another candidate. Both Trump and Harris are viewed as equally capable of enhancing America's quality of life, each receiving a 44% approval rating. However, Trump leads Harris in terms of a clarity of his economic strategy, with 45% support compared to Harris's 42%. The poll conducted between 31 October, that's the 31st of October, and the 3rd November amongst 950 likely voters has a margin of error of 3 points. The New York Post, owned by Rupert Murdoch, Murdoch's News Corporation, endorsed Trump for president in late October. And now to discuss this and give us an overview of the U.S. elections, its process and also preparations, we are joined by two individuals, Professor Christopher Isike, Director, African Center for the Study of United States and University of Pretoria, and Councillor Lade Hepzibah Olugbemi, Councillor of West Thames Mead in the Royal Bureau of Greenwich. You're welcome, lady and gentlemen. Good to have you here. All right,
Thank
now first
you for
of all,
having me.
yes, thany you. Let's go ladies first, shall we, if you do not mind, Professor Isike. I'd like to ask Councillor Lade, can you provide us an overview of the U.S. election process, first of all, including the key steps for primary elections to the general elections? I'm hoping that you...
I'm actually
Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me very clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yes. So the system is very much different from what we have in the UK. So in the UK, our election system is that we have our various political parties. Within the various political parties, you do what you call a long listing. A long listing is where the various candidates put themselves forward. And then within the party, there's a short listing. The short listing is when you have shortlisted the candidates that initially presented themselves, and then there's a voting about within the party on who the successful candidates will be that they're going to put forward, either at the national level or the local government level. And of course, we have the mayoral election as well. It's something very similar that you have in US, where of course we know the battle within the Republican and the Democratic Party. And of course, we know that eventually Trump was selected, or he got through the long list and he was shortlisted. And of course, Kamala Harris was as well. So it's both of them against each other. But one key thing, which is very different from UK and US, is the fact that the balloting system is very different. They have what you call the key battleground states. And these are states that you call the swing states. And there's an electoral strategy that they have. We probably will delve into that a little bit more further when we start to talk. But that's in a nutshell, because I could go on and on to tell you about what the electoral process is. But that in a nutshell is how it works.
Yes, indeed.
So where we're at the moment, is the election for the president. But one key thing to recognize is that the election tomorrow is not just for the president, because we have about 16 states as well that will be electing their various governors as well. So tomorrow is quite key. But that in a nutshell is the electoral system, if I was going to just abbreviate.
Yeah, you've done very good abbreviation, but I still want more from you, Councillor Lade, because I need you to tell us about this early voting system we hear about, and also mail-in voting. It's very strange to us here in Nigeria, so if you would please continue and explain that to us as well.
Fantastic. We have something similar here in UK as well, what we call the postal vote. So obviously, to be able to make sure that we capture all of the, to get the representation of all of the residents, all of the electorate, it's allowed for, in some areas where I think up to about 4 weeks before the election date, people can. And I'm glad that what you're showing on the screen is where they're already counting the vote. So, for example, we've just had a general election here in the UK. And I know that about 2 weeks before, a week before, we were already getting the feelers of who was leading from the postal vote. This is mainly to recognize that there's some areas where the voting centers might be a bit far off. And you know how wide America is. America is massive, massive ground. So there's just the need to make sure that every single resident in every constituent, we could use the word constituent here in UK, that you're able to get across to them. Then those who might not be able to physically go out to vote on the day, so they'll be allowed to post their vote. So, and the postal vote sometimes takes a long while. Obviously, like I said, in America is quite large. So by the time the post gets there, I mean, it might take a while. It might take, it might take a while. It might take 1 week, 2 weeks, depending. And that's why they allow the postal vote to start way before the election day itself.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Christopher, let's come to you and ask about strategy. Now, we've seen plenty of strategy being utilized in the processes leading up to the elections. We saw Trump, his heavy rhetorics on immigration, religion. Kamala Harris only just switched from Trump bashing back to a message of hope. So exactly what kind of strategies reach what kind of people, especially with regards to these elections?
Well, the U.S. system is very complex, like my other panelists did say. And in these particular elections, we've seen deep polarizations, between Democrats and Republicans. And you would think that the leader of the free world, that is at the vanguard of promoting democracy in the world, would frown at, a character like Donald Trump, winning a primary ticket, talk less of being a top contender for a presidential race. So the issue, therefore, is that maybe character is not such an issue. What then is the issue? There are several explanations to all of this, but it appears that there is been a culture war, between educated and non-educated, Americans. Traditionally, educated Americans have always been Democrats, and a lot of people see themselves as those that are non-educated. I'm talking about those who don't have college degrees now, see themselves in Trump in terms of his mannerisms, in speaking directly and addressing the issues that they want to hear, and in even making promises that many of them know he will not keep, but are just happy to hear those promises, mentioned. And so that is what I think best explains, the fact that you have someone who is a convicted felon, a twice impeached president, and with as vulgar as he is, everyone says, "Oh, we don't want our children to be like Trump. He's not going to be a good example for our children," but yet they would vote for him. So it goes beyond the economy, because if you look at the economy right now, the economy is the best recovered economy from COVID all over the world. It's the indicators are very strong. People may not be feeling the impact now, but somehow people are glossing over that. Of course, there are issues with immigration. However, it's not just the policies that have driven support for someone like Trump. So there is a much more deeper issue that one needs to explore, and that's why I'm talking about culture. And this is the reason why, I will stop after this. This is the reason why Trump's message has been kind of simple, even though he has deviated for them. Simple around Kamala Harris has broken it. I'll fix it. I'll fix immigration. I will get the economy to work again. I will get America to be the greatest country in the world. I will stop the wars. There will be no conflict in the world under my presidency. Those are simple messages that he's able to communicate sometimes to his base, and they are right by it. Whereas the Democrats on the other side are not able to articulates a simple message in that manner that people can actually understand. Okay. Of course, in the last couple of days, she has stopped talking about Trump and focused more on the kind of policies she wants to support.
Professor Christopher, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to put a pin in it here for both of you. We're going to go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation, especially when it comes to the sentiments of the wider American now regarding the Trump rhetorics. We'll be back. To stay tuned. There's plenty coming your way after this. Welcome back, and welcome back into the conversation as we were having from before on the final hours leading up to the U.S. elections. I have with me here Professor Christopher Isike, Director, Africa Center for the Study of United States, University of Pretoria, from South Africa, and of course, Councillor Lade Hebzeba Olugbemi, Councillor for West Thamesmead in the Royal Bureau of Greenwich. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Professor Christopher, you said something, and I'd like Councillor Lade to actually react to this regarding the sentiments that Trump actually pushes through for these elections and the people that actually his supporters. It's a very slim margin between him and Harris, but it gives you an idea of the number of people that have or share the same sentiment. So what does that say now, Councillor Lade, for the phrase "America, land of the free"?
Yeah. Okay. One thing that a lot of people are surprised about is the fact that, and I like what Professor said earlier, how did Trump, an ex-convict, once impeached, or is it twice impeached? How did he win the primaries? It's a very big question. We need to understand that Trump understands the electorate. He understands the people of America, and he's been able to drop the right words. And that's why he's been able to gather all of the support. And he's absolutely surprised a lot of people who have been following this election. Who would have thought that Trump would get to the States? Even the last time, the last election, nobody thought Trump was going to get there, but he got there. And one of the key things we need to recognize that these are the top issues in the ballot. And that is what he has addressed.
Okay.
He's talking about the economy.
All right. I would love to let you continue,
okay,
but we're almost out of time, and I really want to pass one more question to Professor Christopher regarding the elections here. Now, Professor, there was plenty of campaign financing, and we saw Elon Musk actually have a very interesting take on the finance or on financing generally. I was wondering if that in any way influenced the Trump supporters.
Yeah, so one of the ways of financing elections in America is the super PAC, the super political action committees that enable super rich people like Elon Musk, to funnel huge sums of monies to funding political party activities like he's doing now in the US. But he's been put on notice that the recent antic of giving $1 million to people who register for a course that is aligned to the election could border on election integrity challenges, and that he could be charged. Even though he has carried on unscathed, it speaks to some of the challenges of political party funding in America and the role that dark money groups play in determining outcomes, elections and outcomes for policies in the United States.
All right. Well, thank you very much for keeping that brief. I want to say thank you very much to you, Professor Christopher Isike, and also Councillor Lade Hepzibah. Thank you for joining us this evening and giving us your own share of opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Now, let's cross over to Washington, D.C., where News Central's chief international correspondent, Ifeanyi, is on the ground with the latest. Ifeanyi, thank you for joining us again this evening. The polls open tomorrow, but nearly 80 million people have already casted their votes. What can early voting tell us about the election results that we would be expecting?
That is right. Nearly 80 million people have already cast their vote in early voting, and that's over half of the 150 million people that are expected to vote. And we do have some trends from the early voting. It seems that Republicans who were once not very keen on early voting are more keen on it than they were. 36% of early votes cast are from Republicans. That's up from 30% in 2020. Democrats account for 38% of early voting. That's actually down from 44% in 2020.
I think we might have lost our correspondent there, but we're going to try and reestablish communication with her to ask her these very important questions regarding the elections. But remember, we're going to be carrying on with information all through the night as we move closer to the elections here on News Central. Moving on now, in a significant legal development, Nigeria's former Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen has been fully cleared of all charges relating to false assets declarations. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has officially overturned his 2019 conviction by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Onnoghen's conviction was initially handed down on April 18, 2019 by the Code of Conduct Tribunal led by Umar Yakubu Danladi. However, the Court of Appeal ruled to discharge and acquit him after a settlement agreement was reached between Onnoghen and the federal government. In the ruling, Justice Ababelo Mohammed ordered that Onnoghen's 4 previously frozen bank accounts be released back to him. Onnoghen's lawyers, Adegboyega Owomola, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, expressed gratitude on behalf of his client to President Bola Tinubu and the Attorney General for facilitating a peaceful resolution.
We all protested. We didn't know that the worst was coming. The worst that came was the removal of our Chief Justice of Nigeria, the head of the third arm of government, in an unceremonious manner. We all shouted about it. It was maneuvered. Unfortunately, the man became a victim. He was denied access to the Council of States. His monies that were in bank were taken away from him. And his life became almost, with respect, meaningless. If you rise from your call to ban 1978 to being removed as Chief Justice of Nigeria, what is left for you? Nothing. When this happened, anything can happen to any of our judges. And we believe that it not or should not happen in a constitutional democracy. Nigeria is practicing constitutional democracy. And therefore, all organs of government, the executive and the legislature, must respect judiciary. So the judgment today has affirmed the superiority of courts over whims and caprices of occupiers of executive and judicial and legislature. Let it be known by the whole world that judiciary in Nigeria is one of the best in the world. We have men and women of character learning who have sacrificed their life from their early age to old age to become anything in judiciary. And yet people talk flippantly, they talk recklessly concerning these eminent Nigerians.
And you're welcome back. Now, in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has sworn in 7 new ministers to his cabinet at the council chambers at the State House in Abuja. Now, this comes after their confirmation by the Senate on Thursday, during which all 7 nominees were confirmed after being screened individually. The new cabinet members took the oath of office in 2 batches, 4 in the first batch and 3 in the second, after the citations were read by the State House Director of Information, Abiodun Oladunjoye. The first 4 appointees include Idi Maiha, Minister of Livestock Development, Yusuf Attah, Minister of State Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Suwaiba Ahmad, Minister of State Education, and Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu, Minister of State Foreign Affairs, amongst others. And advocates in Plateau State have risen to champion programs that will protect the lives of children while they're learning facilities. Now, bearing in mind how the 2023-24 academic session ended with pupils and students of Saints Academy in Jos, the Plateau State capital, when their school collapsed on them. A replay of this is not needed. News Central's Chizoba Nyonwe tells us more.
On July 12 this year, the tragedy struck at Saints Academy in Jos, Plateau State, North Central Nigeria, when not less than 20 school children lost their lives while writing their last examination for the session. The school building in which they were writing the examination collapsed on them, leaving the survivors with varying degrees of injuries. It is on this premise that these stakeholders gathered here on the plateau under the auspices of the Norwegian Refugee Council to discuss measures on the way forward to forestall such occurrence in future.
I believe that our gathering here today is to see how we can build on the efforts, and is to see how we can take the policy and see how we'll be able to, trickle it down, break it down to ensure that it is well domesticated in our state.
Through our work in education, we strive to provide children with the resources and opportunities they need to learn in safe and natural environments. Our commitment to advocacy and programmatic support is aligned with the implementing safe school declaration effectively and sustainably.
We ensure that we extend, we reticulate water to schools. Even when we drill, and install a borehole in a community, we extend it, we prioritize school and then hospital health centers as well, so that students can have access to clean water.
Anything that has to do with school, we are the administrators in the schools, all the principals, whether we are in the private sector or we are in the public school, we are the administrators. And anything that will make our students safe, indeed, we shall partner with that organization.
With measures such as this, security of school children will be more assured.
Some months ago, we conducted a security survey on all schools across Plateau State to identify security lapses for correction. Together, we can build a future where every child's right to education is safeguarded and where schools remain a place of inspiration.
Proactiveness is the key. We should sit down, discuss modalities, study, review some cases that happen in neighboring states with a view to prevent our own.
If standards discussed here are held sacred, then parents and guardians as well would go to sleep with their two eyes closed, knowing that their children and wards are safe in their various schools. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
And moving on to business, let's join our business desk for the business news.
Business news in association with Money Master PSB, the easy way to master your money.
Africa's investment in artificial intelligence is still seen as infinitesimal and not yet ranked. This is stated by the International Telecommunications Union in its AI for Good Impact report, Choices to Shape the Future. According to the union, AI holds enticing prospects, promising to accelerate the speed and maximize the impact of sustainable growth and development worldwide. ITU, the United Nations arm in charge of global communications, noted that with its unprecedented capacity for streamlining processes, monitoring trends, anticipating less than obvious results, and helping to make better decisions, AI can improve public services, enhance climate and disaster resilience, and even cut greenhouse. Tanzanian mining firm Pula Group has filed a lawsuit against billionaire Patrice Motsepe and his companies, namely African Rainbow Minerals, African Rainbow Capital, and Arch Emerging Markets, over an alleged breach of a non-compete agreement. Pula claims the company's investment in Australia's Evolution Energy Minerals, a graphite project neighboring Pula's own, has created an unfair competitive disadvantage. The lawsuit amount is based on a third-party valuation of Pula's projected losses, according to company chairman Charles Stith. Motsepe's companies deny any wrongdoing, asserting that Pula's allegations lack merit. African Rainbow Minerals acknowledged considering expansion into new mineral ventures and stated that Pula Graphite project had been presented for potential investment, but without any agreement to proceed. Zambia's decision to eliminate taxes on digital infrastructure imports has spurred $58 million in investments, boosting connectivity and linking the nation with all 8 of its neighboring countries via fiber optic technology. Technology and Science Minister Felix Mutati highlighted that the tax removal, in effect since 2021, has encouraged substantial private sector investment, which previously lagged due to prohibitive import duties. By creating a more favorable investment climate, Zambia aims to further involve the private sector in economic development. Mutati emphasized that the government is actively fostering investment by promoting tax incentives, innovation, and private engagement, positioning Zambia as a digital infrastructure hub in the region. And that's all on Business News. I am Lekon Onobanjo.
Sports Update, brought to you by Corn Oil. Corn Oil, we go the extra mile.
In the world of sport, the Athletics Federation of Nigeria (AFN) has been indicted by an investigative panel set up to look into specific issues regarding Nigeria's participation at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. The panel set up by the former Sport Minister John Onnoghen came to the conclusion that the AFN officials were responsible for the omission of Favour Philly's name from the official list of competitors in the women's 100 meters race for which she had qualified. The committee recommended that the AFN should compensate Ofili with a sum of $5,000 or its equivalent in Naira. According to the report, conclusive evidence revealed that the Secretary General of the AFN, Mrs. Rita Mosindi, was negligent in her duty of communicating to the Ministry of Sport Development and the Nigerian Olympic Committee about Favour Ofili's event status in a reliable and timely manner. It's recommended that Mosindi should be penalized while also indicting the AFN Technical Director Samuel Onikeku. The chairman of the National Sport Commission, Shehu Diko, reportedly gave approval for the release of the committee's report. Nigeria's under-18 men handball team on Monday defeated host Ethiopia 47-31 in the IHF Trophy Africa Men's Continental Phase in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. After winning their first match against Zambia on Sunday, the team led by coach Emeka Nnamani met the Ethiopian side, spurred on by a partisan home crowd, but were ultimately too strong for their East African opponents. Nigeria's goalkeeper Samuel Obabori was named most valuable player of the match, following his impressive performance against Zambia with another outstanding showing. Nigeria will play Cameroon in the semi-final of the competition on Tuesday. Nigeria's Flamingo won the Fair Play Award at the just concluded FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup in Dominican Republic. Coach Bankole Olowokere's side were rewarded for their exemplary behavior in the tournament. The Flamingos picked the least number of bookings during the competition. The West Africans were eliminated by United States of America in the quarterfinals, going down to a 2-0 loss, despite winning all 3 group games. North Korea claimed the title on Sunday, beating Spain 4-3 on penalties in the final after relegation time had ended 1-1. Finally, in the world of sport, number 1 seed Aryna Sabalenka continued her perfect start to her WTA Finals campaign on Monday night, defeating Yasmin Paolini 6-3-7-5 to improve to 2-0 in the purple round-robin group. She had beaten Zheng Guwen 6-3-6-4 in her first match. And with Zheng beating the other member of the group, Elena Rybakina, that means Sabalenka is guaranteed top spots in the purple group, making her the first player to qualify for the semi-final in Rio this year. Paolini and Zheng will meet on Wednesday to determine second place and thus the second qualifier. Rybakina is eliminated at the moment. If Sabalenka wins just one match or if Igor Swiatek loses a match, then Sabalenka will clinch the WTA's year-end number 1 ranking. And that's it in the world of sport. I am Onyinyechi Obaro.
Tonight on Entertainment News, Coco Jones, Amanda Jones, and Autumn Roway are this year's honorees for the ASCAP Rhythm and Soul Women Behind Music, celebrating trailblazing women in the industry. The 16th annual event will take place on November 12th in Los Angeles, with Nicole George Middleton presenting the awards. Coco Jones, a Grammy winner and nominee, is recognized for her hit I See You and has a new album on the way. Autumn Roway, a Grammy-winning songwriter and producer, is noted for her advocacy for songwriter rights and her collaboration with prominent artists. Amanda Jones Jones, the first African-American woman nominated for an Emmy in music composition, won a Daytime Emmy in 2023 and is working on upcoming projects for Apple TV+. The event will feature DJ producer Nia, and previous honorees include notable artists like Kelly Rowland and Jasmine Sullivan, as well as industry executives. Bobrisky, a controversial socialite, has addressed his recent temporary departure from Nigeria after 2 failed attempts to leave amid legal issues. He confirmed on social media that he is traveling to focus on his mental health and sanity, stating he faced frustrations from security agencies during his attempts. Bobrisky also mentioned that he bought 3 business class tickets costing nearly 30 million naira, but only successfully flew out on November 3rd, 2024. He encouraged critics to reflect on their financial situations before commenting on his travels, asserting that their opinions don't affect him since he's currently abroad. That's all on Entertainment Tonight.